Hey everybody! We are live with our very first edition of In the Waterweeds. In the Waterweeds is our live Voyager hang chat. We are discussing Outlander. We are discussing the third book of Outlander because the third season of Outlander is upcoming, and we have yet to ever do an Outlander book club type discussion. We have talked about the fandom ad nauseum. We have talked about the show ad nauseum. We have talked about the cast and the crew and the author herself, but we have yet to actually discuss just the book, what's written, and why we're all here in the first place. So I wore my Voyager green sweater and my only piece of Outlander jewelry, which is this green butterfly necklace. And I'm so ready to talk Voyager with everyone. Hi, I'm Beth. I'm drinking a little bit and having some spinach dip, and I'm excited to talk about it. I hope if you're joining, use the hashtag in the Waterweeds or Hangoutlader even, and we will kind of check those and talk to you as we go. And who's going to be talking to you is Nikki. Nikki, say hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki, and I'm excited to join this because I've never read Voyager, so I'm a virgin in the books. Not anymore, mind you, but I was. So if my lower third worked, it would have said, reading like a virgin, touch for the Vera first time, but it doesn't. So enjoy that.
That's the best. The best ever.
You go, Karen. Say hi.
Hi, everyone. It feels like it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but it's only 10 o'clock on the East Coast. So I'm in my pajamas, drinking scotch, hoping that today never ends because I have to go back to work tomorrow.
That's no fun. Work is the worst.
Work sucks.
Say hi.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Amy. I'm at my parents' house, still decorated for Christmas. I also didn't want anyone to think that I would buy those ugly curtains for my own house. And I fly home tomorrow. Coming home, it's been very long. I'm ready to go home.
I understand. I do. Even though I didn't go anywhere for Christmas because my whole family lives here, I was very done with them after a couple of days. So.
Yeah. And my parents don't drink, so I didn't bring anything to drink tonight because I didn't need their judgment.
43 years later.
Seltzer.
Hey, I feel that too. I didn't bring anything to any of my family events because no one else drinks except Ryan and I. And, you know, despite needing it, I chose not to offend them.
Yeah.
With my
Apparently we all need to have a holiday together because that's my exact same story. Don't need your judgment, so I'm not gonna do anything in your home.
I'm a big fan of us just meeting for margaritas outside of the family home around the holidays.
So the extracurricular activity trip is always nice too.
Yeah, next week, sister.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Don't hate, y'all.
I super hate.
I know. I'm like ticking people off left and right this week, next week. I'm going to have to drive on through to Memphis just to see you, Beth.
Thank you. Maybe if you drove somewhere one of these times instead of flying over the great state of Tennessee, you could come see.
Well, I'm sorry that you live in flyover country, Beth.
Graceland is the #1 tourist destination in the South, man.
Yes.
I made that up.
That's very telling about it's very telling about the South.
Hey.
All right, let's get into this. That's what people are here for, right? They're here to listen, wax intellectual about the prologue to Voyager. But let's talk about it. First of all, let's talk just real quickly. Nikki already told us she was a Voyager virgin. How did you come by Voyager? I just read it in quick succession from having read the first and second books when I first read them, probably, 8 years ago. So I picked up Voyager immediately on the heels of picking up or putting down Dragonfly and Amber, which I didn't enjoy as much. And the first 6 chapters, having read, I remembered all of it. There was nothing in the first 6 chapters that really happened that I hadn't like impressed me enough for me to remember it. So that's my Voyager story. What about you guys?
As a Voyager virgin, I can tell anyone else out there who started Dragonfly and Amber and couldn't finish that you just put it down. I picked this one up and it was literally from the exact moment that the TV show ended. And I was like, oh my God, it's like exactly where I ended in Dragonfly too. No need to read the French shit. That was the worst part of the season, last season. So I was way into it. I jumped right in. I've read it all on my phone. Tiny little font, and it's been great. I cried the whole time.
Aw.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's the best one I've read so far. Anyway.
No, it is a good start. It's a great start.
I first read Outlander in 2012, and like you, Beth, I kind of hit the first 3, boom, boom, boom. I loved the first 3 books, so I even enjoyed the French shit. In Dragonfly, I loved Voyager up until we like hit the jungle, and I was like, But it's been so long since I read it, I had to pull out my old school first edition Nook, which holds like 1 hour of battery charge. And because my ex-husband and I shared the same Barnes & Noble account, so that's why it's on this crappy old Nook. And I wasn't going to buy the book again on my new Barnes & Noble account.
Oh. I was wondering why you didn't just look it up on like your Nook app on whatever on your regular like tablet.
Right. Couldn't do that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. All right, Karen, your turn. Let's hear it.
So I read through the chapters again tonight because I quite frankly forgot that we were doing this, and as I said earlier to you tonight, it's like the time jumps in the first or in the second and third book are like having the spins after starting with wine and then moving to shots and finishing with a martini. That's kind of what it felt like to me, because the first, 3 chapters are completely different timelines. But, at some point it all just sort of falls back in together. And the first 3 are also my favorite books. Voyager is a really special book to me because it's kind of, when I did my first reread, I happened to pick that book up as I was en route on a long overseas and miserable trip. And it kind of got me into a good place, reintroducing myself to the characters again. And then I reread the entire series. So Voyager is by far my favorite. Outlander will always have a special place in my heart because it's so different and is obviously the door into this world. But I think Voyager is the best of all the, 78 books she's written so far.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. It's my favorite one, and I haven't reread them all, and I've only read the first 5 anyway. But like Voyager, out of those 5, is definitely my favorite and the one that I remember the most. I mean, I remember a lot about Outlander because I've read it more than once, but I remember how I felt in Voyager, and I remember kind of some of the more visceral experiences of reading it. Like Nikki was saying, she cried through the whole first 6 chapters, and I remember crying through the whole 6 chapters. So you go back to 1992 or whenever this book was written, and I don't know when it was written, and you're a Outlander reader, and you've come off the end of Dragonfly and Amber, and the first thing is the prologue. And I guess I like this prologue a lot. It's one of her more literary ones, and I guess it's supposed to be Claire's perspective, but it feels very mystical and kind of fantastical, and you forget a lot of times that that's what this series is.
Yep.
And I love the idea that she's kind of conflating her childhood memories with falling through time and catching on to something that stops you from making the wrong fall, and felt very Alice in Wonderland-y, and yep. I like the prologue a lot.
I agree. I think the prologue is some of her best writing. I mean, obviously there's not really any dialogue in it, so that helps in some ways. But yeah, I mean, I sort of hear Stevie Nicks singing in the background, and there's this, crystals and lace and,
It's witchy.
right? I mean, but it does, it kind of takes you back and puts you emotionally back into the suspension of belief. You are stepping back, as she says, over the puddle or into the puddle, or into J.K. Rowling's suitcase, into another world, right? And it gets you in the right frame of mind to jump back into this really fantastical world.
I have a different perception of that. Or not perception, but I like the prologue, but I just remember the first time I read Voyager, I was like, prologue, whatever. Like, where the fuck is Jamie? Is he alive? Like, I need to know.
Just read chapter 2, lady.
That's true. So that's what I liked about this first section. It was like very satisfying that like some questions are answered, and then you just feel like you're all of a sudden, all right, things are moving and it's happening. The pacing, I don't feel that way, that it's kind of like I'm jerked back and forth. I just liked kind of flashing into everybody, and I just felt like we were going somewhere, and I just thought that it was really well done. The only thing I don't like about the first few chapters are I feel like the death of Blackjack Randall is incredibly unsatisfying. Like, just all of a sudden he's dead and laying on top of Jamie. And it's so unsatisfying that as I read further books, there's like some one-eyed guy like 10 books from now, and I kept thinking, maybe this is Blackjack Randall come back because he only has one eye, because I just like, this really just can't be how he died, because we hated him for so much, and then just now all of a sudden he's dead off screen essentially.
Yeah, I want to get back to that, but I agree that like I love the pacing of this first time and the first few chapters, and I think that if you're that reader who didn't know what was upcoming, you don't know there's going to be 9 to 10 books, you're just waiting on to see what happens after Dragonfly and Amber, you're thinking you're getting a trilogy, right? And you're reading it the day it comes out, you're immediately told that Jamie did survive Culloden. And that's so satisfying as a series reader. And at the same time, if you're brand new to this book and you just pick it up at the airport or whatever, I think you could pick it up and be immediately immersed in this soldier who thinks he's dead, who's coming conscious. And that's so well written. The idea that he thinks he's dead and in purgatory, that he could feel parts of his body, and he's being funny about his sore nose. And I mean, it's super dreamy, but at the same time, it's intriguing all on its own if you were coming to it brand new with brand new eyes. So it may be one of the reasons I like Voyager, or why it was so memorable, because I felt like it stood on its own so well. And it's because of these first few chapters, I think.
I agree. I think anyone could pick it up and jump in. And I think, sad to say it, but I think this first section has had better pacing than some of or most of the episodes of the TV show.
Well, that's a very low bar. Very, very low bar. I mean, like
it is a low bar,
like step over a crack bar, okay?
Well, I'll give this to the show. They did, going forward a little bit into, I think it's chapter 3, where it's talking about Frank and how Frank finds out. I think that they do the Frank reveal, or how she tells Frank they're meeting in the hospital, and how she tells him what really happened to her. I felt like that was far better done in the show than it's done here. I feel like her just like flying into what happened to her, despite the fact that it only happened 2 days ago. I don't know. I felt like in the show it was a better reveal. And
it's fun. I love that flashback. Actually, I love that entire flashback in the book. I reread that entire section just a couple of hours ago, and I was reminded about how much detail and just the tension between the two of them that had erupted over so long. And obviously we're going to get into another flashback a little bit later, but I was struck by that difference. I was like, well, this is kind of a letdown for people who are reading the book for the first time if they've already seen the show, because that's already happened. So it'll be interesting to see what that tension is, or if it's just sort of organic in the show coming up this next season. But I loved that flashback. Could it have been plopped down, a couple of chapters later? Yeah, maybe. Or could there have been a paragraph or so leading up to it a little differently? Yeah, maybe, because it's a chunk. It's like 8 or 10 pages of that
of the hospital flashback.
No, of once they get into the apartment. And
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. That's a section that again, one of those things you just cling to. I even remembered that Brianna was wearing pink frilly dress and it had a pin in it and all
With
of
the
that.
pin.
Like,
I feel like
yes.
every mother who's ever been exhausted from birth and breastfeeding, that was so relatable to me. I totally understood Claire in those scenes.
Yep.
Yes, 100%. But I'm talking about specifically just that hospital flashback where he finds out she's pregnant because the doctor told her he came in the room.
That's true.
Now the show did that so much better, so much more satisfying for her to tell him, and he had that like split second where he thought it was his, and then he gets so upset. It's a far better reveal. That's the only thing I was really comparing show-wise, is that particular tension of her telling him where he's been and all of that. That's in the book. It seems like it's really rushed, and it may just be just because I was expecting the tension that this show had. I don't know. But we can talk about the whole like Brianna's done. I thought it was really interesting that she chose to pick one day out of their life together with Brianna and Frank. She's 3 months old and it's start having sex again.
Yeah.
So it's not just we don't get a glimpse of what it's like the whole time she's pregnant. We don't get a glimpse of the birth of Brianna, like what Frank really did. I think she says something a little bit about it, like the first time he holds her and then a week later she was his, but it's like one sentence. But then we get this whole long view of her early motherhood in the context of the day they start having sex again. And I felt like that's such a potent way to do it, because that's a big deal, A, when you have a baby, and B, obviously a big deal for her letting go of Jamie. She has the prayer scene. There's just a whole lot in that chapter to parse out. But at the same time, it's kind of, I just love that they're specifically that day is the one that we see. What do you guys think?
Well, in my mind, it stands out as one of the most erotic scenes because of the way he, eased her fullness of breast. But and it's always stood out to me. And then when you read it, it's like one line.
Mm-hmm.
And what my imagination did, well done, imagination. I always think that's one of the sexiest scenes in the book, and it's really hardly anything.
I totally agree with that, 100%. And I think it's one of the more visceral scenes to me. Like I can feel that one boob being full, like what that feels like, needing it to be relieved, and like how it would feel for him to like approach it tentatively. And I've always thought like breastfeeding-ish stuff is hot, like not actually breastfeeding your kid, but like having breast milk and being a sexual person at the same time, I think is a hot combination. So I agree. I think it's one of the hottest scenes. It made me sad. I remember later on realizing that Jamie and Claire have been separated for so long that he doesn't get to experience that with her, because I thought it was so hot.
I just thought it was weird.
Thanks, Karen.
I mean, I thought it was too soon. And she obviously was going through a tough time, potentially postpartum depression. She's in grief. She's in mourning still. I'm sorry. I remember after Connor was born, having fits of energy where I didn't know what to do with it, and being highly aroused and being very, very attracted to Jack and all of these things. But I think had I been mourning my dead husband and with someone that I wasn't really in love with anymore, I don't know that would have been my natural reaction. Maybe, who knows? Maybe that's the Tinder of 1968. I don't know. But I don't know. I thought it was kind of weird. I also wasn't sure. Was that the only time they ever had sex? Ever? Again? Because, well, it's left up to discussion in the rest of the books and all the flashbacks. Did they have marital relations throughout the rest of their marriage?
I think she says, is this not one of my wifely duties? And then she says, it's like Frank looking at her saying, are you my wife now or not? And then she goes on to live with him for 20 years as his wife. So I think it's fairly obvious that Claire's drawing a line in the sand and saying, yes, I'll be your wife now. I think that's what it means.
Too easy.
I took it to mean that. I don't have the mother experience, obviously, but I loved, and if I could figure out how to get back to that chapter on my phone, I can't for like the last 10 minutes. figure that out. But I love the line of how she just says something about on the rug, and it was like an ocean and it swept over her. Something along those lines. I was like, oh, it's so good. Like she just kind of everything that was happening and became part of it. I just really liked it.
Yeah. It's always been like a scene that I've enjoyed. What I don't enjoy about those chapters is the huge amounts of back and forth that we go through. We go from 68 to 45, and some of it's short and some of it's not. And so I know that that we talked about the pacing a little bit, but that's one thing that actually kind of bothers me a little bit. I do wonder why she chose to do it that way. Why those, I think it's chapter 2 and chapter 3 are so full of that, all those flashbacks and back and forth, because it's the first time we get Jamie's point of view in chapter 1, right? And oh my gosh, that is I mean, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to be in Jamie's head, despite the fact that it's third person. It's really the first time that happens. So,
is that the first time ever in the books anywhere?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Because in Dragonfly, we only get Roger and Claire, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So I love it. I love being in his head, especially that first chapter is so good.
Yeah, and he doesn't come off as dopey as you think being in Sam's head would be. Love you, Sam. But I'm just saying, I feel like it would have been a little different. Since I obviously watched the show, those characters are so closely tied to the actors for me, and I don't have the, 20 years space.
That's a good question too. This isn't the first time I've tried to reread the books once the characters have been cast, but I don't have any problem really seeing them the way that I've always seen them. I think the only one who really looks like their character to me is Tobias. I have a hard time conflating or finding what I used to think Frank looked like. But I don't see Katrina. I don't see Sam. I don't see Laura Donnelly. I just, I see the characters as the way that I see them.
I agree. I mean, I never had anybody in my mind for Jamie. I know that's blasphemy. Everybody has their own freaking Jamie, Viking, Norse, whatever, Highland god. I never did. He always was like, I don't know, blank face for me. So Sam is now Jamie for me. It doesn't matter. But even when I read the books, I still, for some reason, have Kate Winslet or Kate Beckinsale in my head. As much as I love Katrina, I think she's absolutely fantastic. When I read the books, I don't have her in mind.
Do you guys think that she's telling the flashbacks to Roger? Because Anna Chucholo said that she didn't think that scene was hot because it's not Jamie that's doing it. And she also says I was not cool with it, and telling it to Roger was gross. I don't necessarily think she's telling Roger. I think she's just reliving those moments.
Yeah,
she's not telling him. Yeah,
I think
that's why it's in italics. If she was telling him, it wouldn't be that would be actually part of her telling him.
I didn't read it like that. I think there are certain things she tells Roger, but I don't think she was telling him about the rug and the breastfeeding and the whatever.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so either. But that would certainly be a new way to read it.
Story time with Claire. Sit down on my lap, Roger, while I tell you about my titties.
Well, we know Jenny likes to do
Highlanders.
Jenny has no problem touching her nipples in front of her brother. So
that was the weirdest part. I'm sorry. Brothers and sisters should not be talking about genitalia, looking at it. That was the weirdest for me. I don't know. That was odd.
Jenny is so weird to me. Jenny has no boundaries.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if Diana Gabaldon has brothers and sisters and what that relationship's like.
She does. In fact, her sister is who she based Claire's hair on.
Poor sister.
Okay.
Hey, Jenny will get you laid. She'll send a slore, as Beth calls her, to your cave.
You cannot call Mary McNabb a slore. I cried during that too.
I cried during that
I like Mary McNabb. I love her.
That's a true giver right there.
Well,
She's 25 and looks 106.
Sign me up. Hey, that was the best night of her life. Sign me up.
With her wool.
the thing is, we'll see. Rabbit McNabb is supposed to be like 10 or 11, maybe, or a little bit older, 12 maybe. And so Mary's been married twice already. He's her only kid, from what I can tell. She probably is supposed to be like 28 and looks 60, 62, skin and bones. And she's like, come do me, but I'm going to keep my shift on. I don't blame her. I like the scene with Mary. It bothered me at first. I remember being viscerally upset. Like I had like when you get jealous or you get upset, your underarms prick with like heat.
Yeah.
That's how I felt when I read the Mary McNabb scene. I was like, don't do it, Jamie. Walk away.
Well, that's how I felt during the other scene that shall not be named on this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about that.
Fury.
I didn't feel, I wasn't angry at all, and I thought I don't know, the other scene, whatever, but I don't know. I liked that scene, and I thought if he's thinking she's never coming back in the same thing, like, I don't know. I'm not saying it well, but.
I never even thought of it really as him cheating or in a sexual way. I always just felt so bad for him because he was just like, I've been in here for 7 years and I'm tapping out. Like that, just the weight of doing that and I'm always cold all the time. And I just would think like, oh, the misery.
Yeah. And the smell.
Yeah.
The smell. Really?
Yeah,
I mean,
Mary McNabb took one for the team for that right there.
Well, so did he. I mean, come on.
He did wash once a month, right? Or he just shaved. Did he wash
Just
his splits
shaved.
and cracks? I don't know.
How often did she wash? I mean, let's be
All
realistic here, okay? Stanky.
Oh, let's hope that she was washing a little bit.
Before she parted the folds.
Oh my God. Oh my God, the first ever NC-17 hangout. No, that's not true.
That's not the first ever, no.
No.
But I mean, he's like crying when it's happening. He's such a virgin still. Like he's just so like, I cannot. He's so scandalized when Jenny like even suggests he gets a wife or goes around town to the unmarried ladies, and he's like super scandalized. And Jenny's like, what? You're totally hot, which is kind of a weird thing for her to say. And it just cracks me up that he's still, I mean, it's what you kind of like about him, that he's that honorable or whatever, but he's still such a virgin.
Well, I actually took the whole Jenny pushing thing as more of sort of a sign of the times. Yeah, she's obviously an incessant busybody, but survival there, especially in that time, was about partnerships. There were not bachelors, right? You got married, you had kids so they could help you milk the freaking cows.
Yeah.
It was just different. So I think that was really more a sign of how Jenny is kind of stuck back in that time and is traditional. And that was the traditional path. And he's actually a character and a man that is in some ways not really of the 18th century. He's relatively progressive. He listens to his wife. He was a virgin until he got married. I mean, so he's kind of a futuristic dude anyway, and is kind of staying on that path where she is just acting like any other, 18th century woman in the Highlands. Hey, dude, we got a harvest coming up. You better bring some more manpower into this farm. And part of it is, clearly she likes sex and she wants him to like sex, I guess. So I think that's part of it. But
that's the thing about this whole thing. Why are they so open with each other, A? And B, why is Jenny still bringing children into this like horrific like set of circumstances? I'm super happy that we witnessed wee Ian's birth, especially because he can become super important. And I love that Jamie is there for his birth, and he's like the first man that he it sees and is held by, and that's like great for later on. But I'm thinking, your husband's in jail, you don't know if he's coming back, you have a famine going on, you have all these mouths to feed. Like, why didn't you let Ian pull out? Like, What?
They're hardcore Catholic.
Where's your tansy oil sponge? Why is this going
Where's your
on?
loofah?
Okay, Diana.
I'm just
Tansy
saying. I mean,
Right?
where's their birth control like thoughts even? It seems like it's not even a thought. Am I
Well, they're
wrong? in
Catholic.
thinking- Okay.
Catholic.
So you think
And-
Jenny and Ian only do it for procreation?
No, that they would do it, but that they wouldn't practice any sort of family planning situation.
What's that saying? People who use the pull-out method, what do you call them? Parents.
Mm-hmm.
That's them.
That is correct.
They didn't have
in high
TV.
school.
There was no Netflix, no Hulu. Well, like that's why people, you know, when there's a hurricane and all the lights are out, you get a baby boom.
Right on.
The pull-out method worked fine for me in high school. I am a proponent.
Children, do not listen to her.
Because I can tell you another story about college in which it doesn't.
Oh no.
We're going into the dark ages in 3 weeks. Do not listen to her.
All right. But not that they're going to be watching YouTube. The dark ages come on, and
They are going to be watching you.
that's the only thing they're going to be doing is watching YouTube.
Tonight's episode of Waterweeds is sponsored by Planned Parenthood. Please make your donations today.
In honor of Mike Pence.
I want to talk about chapter 4. It's the Dunbonnet chapter. It's the one where Jamie is a vampire and drinks the stag blood, which is probably the only part of this whole section that I forgot happened. But
I don't remember that.
Jamie shoots a deer with an arrow, and he goes to it and slices its neck. And as the blood is like pouring out, he like scoops it in his hands and drinks it and gets real bestial. And it's totally Edward Cullen. It's 100%. It's such an Edward Cullen moment.
Okay, folks, it's 10:40. Please write that down. The
It
first
went back to Twilight.
comparison happened at 10:40.
I mean the way that it's written. I mean, you should. Okay, I'm gonna read it. Okay, I'm not gonna read it in Diana's voice, no matter how much you beg. But here we
Oh
go.
God, please,
Come on.
please.
I haven't listened to her in a long time. I'm not well prepared. The blood spurted hot over knife and hand, pumping 3 times, the jet dying away to a steady stream as the carcass drained, the great vessels of the throat cut through. He had paused to think he might not have done it, but hunger and dizziness and the cold, fresh intoxication of the night had taken him far past the point of thinking. He cupped his hands beneath the running stream and brought them steaming to his mouth. The moon shone black on his cupped, spilling hands, and it was as though he absorbed the deer's substance rather than drank it. The taste of the blood was salt and silver. The heat of it was his own. There was no startlement of hot or cold as he swallowed, only the taste of it, rich in his mouth, and the head-swimming, hot metal smell, and the sudden clench and rumble of his belly at the nearness of food. He closed his eyes and breathed, and the cold, damp air came back between the hot reek of the carcass and his senses. He swallowed once and then wiped the back of his hand across his face, cleaned his hands on the grass, and set about the business at hand. That is some Twilight fic. Just so you know, that's how it's written in the Twilight fandom.
Okay.
I'm such worst case scenario, Sally. When I read that part, I thought, oh my gosh, what would I do in that case? Like if I were starving, would I drink blood? Like what nasty things would I eat? Would I eat deviled eggs? Like how bad do I have to, how hungry do I have to be?
No, I would not eat deviled eggs.
Sidebar, my mom ate deviled eggs yesterday for New Year's Day, and they were
Pork.
had so much paprika on them, you couldn't even see the top. And I was like, Mom, it's supposed to be a sprinkle of paprika. You don't just dump the spoon-sized paprika on top of this. What are you doing? She was like, I don't know. It was coming out too fast. I was like, you like it like this. Anyway, I ate 3 of them.
It's a garnish. Oh my God. I love deviled eggs, but that sounds terrible.
You can have mine.
Okay.
The point is, this whole scene is so like, it is it's like deep fantasies, like the way it's written. I mean, she's talking about like moon shadows and stuff,
Silver,
and his
black, yeah.
like his eyesight in the dark, and how good he is at being a beast, and then how he has to like put the mantle of humanity back on when the deer goes over his shoulders and stuff. And so it's just really, really like the physicality of him becoming beast Jamie versus human Jamie. It's all up in that chapter, the Dunbonnet chapter, and I love it. It's actually, I think, one of the best written chapters of the whole series, probably because it doesn't have a lot of dialogue. But
it's so sensory. I feel like she does an amazing job of making you feel the cave, smell the cave, like even just being out in the landscape and the starkness of it. And the taste of the blood. It's really well done.
Yeah,
I agree. And let's posit a theory about this Twilight Outlander connection here. Is it possible that Stephanie actually read this and then created her world?
No. Edward came to her in a dream
after reading Voyager.
No, obviously Voyager came first, outsplainers. I'm not that dumb.
Well, actually.
But I will say that is a very, it just makes me think of Twilight, and it makes me think of Twilight fic specifically, because a lot of those were more vampiric in nature, and they focused more on like what they would do when they were hunting and thirsty and stuff. And it was very vampiric. I mean, even if Twilight had never been written, that scene is very vampiric. Like, he's becoming a beast and enjoying and needing the taste of blood and being cool with it. And even though it makes him a little queasy, like, he's still cool with it. Like, so, I mean, it's a vampiric scene. I like it.
And also
Can I actually something right now?
Show.
Please.
This is a actually for the author. When she complains, like, why do you guys make it seem like Jamie is just so huge or so redheaded? This book is why. She talks about how his coloring makes him so distinctive, how he can't escape to France because he's so giant. People would notice him right away. So that's, I just would bookmark things. I'm like, oh, Jamie's really red-haired. Oh, Jamie really is humongous. Oh, okay. Now I get why people think, well, that guy doesn't look on screen like what I pictured. Not that I give a shit what Sam looks like. He's fine.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, there's plenty of times where you read it and you realize that Jamie probably looks like all the 6'3" men that you know. You know what I mean? Like the lean, attractive, hairy-bodied 6'3" men that you know. I don't know any redheaded men that are 6'3", but whatever. Like, still, that's what you...
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Do I?
Well, not personally, but there's that dude on Twitter that you send us pictures of sometimes.
I think he's blonde. The porn star?
Yes.
I don't know how tall he is.
He's huge. Not that I've seen a whole lot of pictures of him, mind you, but
Anyway, you guys, there's a porn star that I think has the same penis as Jamie Fraser. But anyway,
you might.
I just think that there is that, like, obviously she means in relation to men of that time who would be really small. It's not he's like a football player big, but it's obviously in comparison to men of that time. But I think that doesn't come through because we're used to men that are that tall and big and all that stuff.
Right. But like when you have that vision of the king of men, and I just like the casting of the show, I'm sure Sam is the right size. Everyone else in comparison to him, he just doesn't have that distinctiveness that I always pictured Book Jamie to have.
Yes. And honestly, yes, he's not redheaded enough.
Yeah.
Not the way she describes it. Like, definitely not how she describes it. The sun doesn't catch his hair and make it flame. He's not a red deer pelt. Okay, like that is not how Sam.
Well, thank God. Ugh.
Thank goodness. That would not be attractive.
No. We don't need that.
From someone who has red hair, thank you, Bottles. I don't think that would be a good look on a guy. Sorry.
Well, isn't sort of the whole King of Men thing also not just about his size, but about his personality and his intellect and how he is a leader and how he interacts with people. So yes, he's supposed to be sort of the George Washington of his generation. You know, George Washington was 6'3" or 6'4", which was massive at that time, but would be pretty normal here. But combined with his courage and his leadership ability and apparently his, you know, I don't know, other attributes. That's what it's all about. And obviously, you know, I think Diana has said numerous times that he's fashioned after her husband, who's like 7'2" or something.
No, I think he's 6'3".
Huge.
I think he's 6'3".
Well, she's like 3.5 feet tall, so it probably seems a lot bigger.
No,
He's so tiny.
Pockets.
She's so...
her son is like 6'5".
Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
The only reason that I brought it up is because I just really was aware of it in these chapters. It was just he's read Jamie. They know who he is. He has to be the Dunbonnet to cover his hair. He cannot escape to France because they would spot him at the docks right away.
And by the way, word does not travel that fast back then. I mean, it barely travels that fast now.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Anyway.
Hold on, I'm telling Blurdy MJ on Twitter exactly where you can find Jamie drinking blood. Page 46 in the trade paperback.
Yeah, a lot of people totally forgot about it.
I know.
It's a great scene,
I did too, and I just read it. Oops.
Excuse me.
I don't know if I would have forgotten about it because I read recently, but it just immediately made me think of Twilight, so that's why I wanted to talk about it.
Right.
Why would you not? Everything goes back to Twilight.
Right.
It does.
Anna brought it up on Twitter, but should we talk about poor Fergus?
I was just about
to. That was the saddest. Come on.
It was sad, but he had such a good attitude about it. Really did.
Because he's going to be taken care of.
Yeah. Can you just see? I was a man of leisure.
Which is interesting. But if you read past book 5, Beth, and if you have the patience to get past there, that actually comes back full circle in his character, where he can't take care of his family because he's one-handed. And he had, at that point, this whole dreams of, I'm going to be the man of leisure, I'm going to be taking care of the rest of his life. And it actually completely turns on him, and he just crumbles and becomes, quite frankly, a real asshole for a while. So that's just, it's, I don't know that it was mindful and that she did it that way on purpose, or if that was foreshadowing or what, but that whole scene, it's like, this kid chooses happiness. He's had the crappiest, shittiest life, and he just had his hand cut off, and he chooses happiness. Well, he actually has a really horrible stretch in his life later because he lost his hand.
Oh, so she read Johnny Tremaine in the 5th grade. And
also known as Tremaine's Playing.
And she decided to put Johnny Tremaine in Voyager.
Perhaps. I've never read Johnny Tremaine.
I loved Fergus. Fergus and Wee Ian are my 2 favorite characters. But his description about what should happen at the birth, like all these little things he does, it just makes me fall in love with Fergus. Like his humor. You need to put an egg and a chicken at the vagina to make it all go well because he's seen lots of births in the whorehouse. I just love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
so cute.
Neither of them have any guile. Both those characters are like they're just pure in their joy of being with Claire and Jamie, and there's just like no duplicitousness about either of them. Although young Ian, when he starts hanging with all the chicks a little bit later, gets a little squeamish at times, but I think that's why I like those characters. And Ian is by far my favorite character. He's just a great character.
Well, how did you like his introduction then in this one?
I forgot that it was Ian until I was like, oh shit, it's Ian.
I did too. I would think he was older than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little gawk.
And that was the first like little baby. Jamie's holding his little butt and just. Yeah. Those are those moments where I feel so bad for Jamie that he never got to hold his own baby.
I know. I was thinking of that when it all happened. I was like, you're going to miss out on them being together when she has Brianna, and we're missing all that lovely storytelling.
Yeah, it's one of the things that made me like so needing to find out what happens and how they get back, and assuming at this point up to chapter 3 that somehow she's going to go back in time and actually go back in time. Like, you know what I mean? Like not be 20 years from when they separated, but she's going to get to go back to this time. And so it's one of the things that propels you forward into the rest of the book, or into this book specifically, and then also bums you out when you get back and you realize what's really happening. So I love it, but there's, again, things that now that when you read forward and you go back, then you think, oh gosh, Wee Ian was so small when at the end of Voyager, like he was so young, and you forget that, and you know, forget that he and Jamie had this moment, and you know, all that stuff. So
he's a baby now, but by the end he'll be a victim of sexual abuse just like everyone else.
Just like all the other babies.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Actually, it's not really a spoiler alert. I mean, really, let's think about how plots generally progress in this series. It's not really a spoiler alert.
No.
Have you met someone? They're going to be raped. Get ready.
Eventually they'll have a very uncomfortable, problematic experience with someone gross. Just
Nothing
wait.
that antibiotics can't take care of.
I always wondered how Jamie's leg healed. Like it was infected and gangrenous and all that stuff. And like they just
boiling water into it. That happens later. They do that flashback.
Oh, I missed it. It's later on.
It's later.
It's later.
We haven't gotten there yet. Jenny saves his life.
When it comes later, yeah.
I was going to say pouring boiling water onto the skin would probably make it worse because you would kill the skin and not be able to have a skin graft. Whatever. That's stupid, Jenny.
Diana knows science, so it's real.
Diana knows science, but not climate change. I was cracking up because she, in the deer scene.
Kara's face!
In the deer scene, she uses the word ungulates. I think that's how you say it. And I knew what it meant. I didn't have to look it up because my daughter's like learning about land animals right now, and ungulates are animals that have hooves. All animals that have hooves.
Well, we know Diana is a biologist or whatever it was.
Zoologist, right?
Zoologist, yeah. So
she knows animals. She knows some
she
shit,
knows
y'all.
the animals.
She knows some shit, y'all.
And yet she couldn't look up the name of a real church in Boston. Whatever.
Is that not a real church?
I do not believe so.
Why not put a real church in there? Like, how hard is that?
Right.
A real neighborhood.
That surprises me that she wouldn't, given how much research she does.
Does it have to do with the name? Because remember, Frank makes fun of the name, right?
Yeah, he was like an old Irish saint or something.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, the Irish.
It wasn't a throwaway comment. It was actually a super racist comment. I took it to be.
Yeah.
I was that made me go, you're an asshole, Frank. I always sort of teetered on not liking you. Now I fucking hate you.
Yeah, it is. It is racist. I mean, is it racist or is it classist?
It's very Anglophile.
I don't know what the right.
There's anything wrong with that?
Ethnocentric, maybe. I don't know what the right word is.
Rule Britannia.
It's rude.
I feel bad. I feel bad trying to figure out what it is. Sorry.
You're problematic. That's what it is.
Do we think, based on the flashback about Frank, that he was a cheater, or is that just Claire's perception of his behavior?
I do.
Always
I'm sure he was.
I thought Frank said something specific about it. Oops, I should open the weather app.
Yeah, he doesn't say anything specific. Like in this flashback, she says that they like go to the party, and there's the two girls that like eyes at them the whole time, and there's the girl that ends up leaving crying, and
that's it. Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be like he cheated.
Oh yeah.
It's a pretty obvious assumption that that's what happened to me.
But Diana she likes to say that it's not clear, and that Claire obviously loves him for a long time and says that he's not a cad and all this other stuff. And so she likes to give it this murky quality, like she does a lot of other things. So I always thought that this was, yeah. I always thought this was very clear that he was cheating.
It doesn't bother me that he is for some reason.
Yeah, me either.
No, me either.
I think it makes it easier. I mean, and maybe I went through that mental gymnastic to justify her going back. You know, I just took it on faith that he realized that she didn't love him and that he was getting sexual attention from other places, and he went with it. And she was like, "Hey, this is an arranged marriage. Bree's grown up. I'm out of here, man." That's kind of how I took it.
But you don't think that they had sex after that one time?
No, I don't.
See, I'm thinking they're still like sexually active, especially because Claire's, supposed to be like Little Miss Horny Pants. Little Horny Pants can't do without some dicks, so she's probably like going to Frank all of the time. So my assumption is that they're still sexually active. So why is he?
Well, if that's the case, why did she go to Joe Abercrombie and say, "Am I still sexually attractive?"
Abercrombie.
Abernathy, right? Whatever.
Same thing.
I thought you said it on
The
purpose.
same thing.
That's funny. Are you saying that you're thinking Frank was cheating on her after they got back together? Because I didn't get that.
Yes.
I was thinking for sure before.
Well, and who would blame him, right?
Well,
I mean, for that.
3 years she was gone.
No, because the flashback happens in Boston.
Correct.
The flashback is when they're together. And there's a girl that's across the room that's cutting daggers at them, and Lee's bawling. And she talks later on in the book, I think, about how he's gone really late at night and doing office hours and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure. So that has to be in Boston.
And lipstick on his collar or something, right?
Yeah, she says he's always fairly careful about not having lipstick on his collar. So that's one of the things that Diana says, well, he never actually did have lipstick on his collar, so we don't know. She's just assuming that he is, and because he doesn't have any evidence of it, he was just discreet.
I read it as that party and all of that stuff happened before they ever moved.
No, it couldn't have, because
she said, "I'm very pregnant."
But they moved. Yeah, she's pregnant, but they were in Boston.
They were,
so it's before they start having sex again.
Okay.
That is true. But
I took it as they're
but
still,
not before. They're still together. They've still made their pact to like go be married or whatever. So
I took it as that whole whoever that person was that happened while she was gone, and then Claire reappears on the scene, and that girl is distraught about it.
Oh,
well,
no.
Yeah, it couldn't have been that. It couldn't have happened that way because they weren't in Boston then.
Stop rating Frank for me.
I'm just saying. We're gonna have outsplainers explaining it to you, so I might as well do it because I'm kind. But yeah,
I don't give a fuck, outsplainers. I've seen their apartment. Shut up, outsplainers.
My house. Okay, but hang on. Let me ask y'all this question. In the show, Frank makes her promise that they are going to live as man and wife, they're going to be committed to each other, and they're going to make a go of it. Did that conversation happen in the book?
Not in these 6 chapters.
No, right? So I think I don't think that there was ever this. I mean, obviously, when they consummate their relationship again, maybe to Beth's point, there's that moment where they're like, "All right, we're in it to win it now. We're gonna figure this out." I happen to think it was just an emotionally charged night, lots of adrenaline, very, very little sleep. They're both horny. I think that's what happened. That's kind of all I took from it. But I don't think that there was ever that moment where he was like, "You're with me or you're not with me, and you're going to be with me because I'm not leaving you." In the books, I don't remember that being in the books, unless I'm forgetting something.
I know that she has conversations where she gives him a few ultimatums, kind of maybe about Brianna or the looking at the Jacobite stuff, and obviously she talks about in this him continuing to look up all of that stuff, and she just saying, "I don't want to know about it. I purposely didn't look at it." Like he kept on. So I don't know what their agreement was in the book. I don't remember. That's why we're doing the reread. But the way that it's done in the show is definitely at least not in these first 6 chapters.
Yeah.
But I do think that they went back to being like regular bed buddies. I don't think that she just I don't think horny Claire was satisfied with just the breast milk scene. I think she would want it more often.
Yeah. I think Twitter agrees with you. Everyone thinks Frank is a cheater, eater. But the best tweet ever came from Courtney, and she says, "I picture all the girls outside of Frank's office and in his class, like in Indiana Jones."
That's right. Yes, I love you guys. Yes,
guys, go down.
Totally, absolutely.
Especially because he's British, like ex-MI6 from the World War II, British, and he's a history professor, and he's Tobias Menzies, and I would be doing that too. So I don't blame them, just like I don't blame Mary McNabb and the tavern wenches that are sucking on Jamie's thighs. Like, that makes perfect sense. You know, you can be a little upset with Frank for not being more circumspect with his wang.
Everyone's saying Frank's the bad guy on Twitter, and I'm real sad about it.
Sad.
Someone saying Diana retconned Frank. I think it was Mara. And that she wrote him as vile, and she's now just trying to be a contrary
I think vile is
person.
a little strong of a word. I mean,
vile is strong.
His whole world was destroyed. She left. He had no idea where she was, and he had lived in this very proper, controlled world where, you know, before the war, they were going to be married, and she was going to settle down and have kids, and he was going to be a college professor, and life was going to go on in this perfect sort of very British path. And then the war happens, they get back together, they're struggling already, and then she disappears. I mean, I think his reactions in many ways is perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Of course. She told him a bullshit story. I went through the Stones, and I met this guy in the 1700s. Yes.
And he was cheating on her during the war, too. Remember, he implies that at the fireplace scene in Outlander before she goes through the Stones. Right? So this, I mean, to the point, I agree. He's been kind of reconditioned or, you know, rehabbed, if you will, in hindsight. And that's fine. You might want to change the way a character is perceived, or maybe you regret how you wrote him. I mean, J.K. Rowling has come out and said that, you know, Hermione and Harry should have ended up together. It happens, right? But
Harry and Draco, she means.
A horn dog, cheater McCheaty, and I don't think that they had normal marital relations after the post-pregnancy sex scene. I mean,
so
maybe
you don't think
here and there, but
you don't think she had sex with anybody from the time on the floor with the titty scene to A. Malcolm Printer?
I think that's entirely possible. Reread that scene. It's like riding a bike. She says, well, I guess it's like riding a bike, isn't it? I mean, there are a couple of hints there.
2 years since Frank died.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm not saying they didn't have sort of drunk sex now and again, but I don't think that they had it was an arrangement. I think that they lived together.
I believe that for sure. That they weren't like, okay, everything's cool now. It was just kind of like they tolerated each other, and then when they each had a need, they scratched or itched or whatever.
That I can see.
Especially because I think that she's...
said on Twitter, sorry, I can't remember where I read it, that it wasn't a marriage, it was more of an understanding.
Yeah.
No, but we haven't seen, in these 6 chapters, we haven't seen the full evidence of that. What she says in her own flashbacks is that he wasn't a cad because he took her back, and that he, you know, was super loving at some points, and then talks about her wifely duties and mentions her twin bed. So you can make a lot of assumptions based on those factoids, but I would assume that even him going to find her at the church that night, you know, speaks to a man who's not totally disconnected from what his wife might need, even if she doesn't know that she needs it. And I mean, if I were to tell one flashback of one day in my mind from when my daughter was 3 months old, and I told you things that Ryan did and said during that day, you would never think, why in the world would you have stayed married to that guy? Like, I mean, a lot worse than coming home and being like, why can't you take care of yourself a little bit? You know what I mean? Like, that's just like, that's the one thing he said. Like, why can't you fix up your hair? My boss is coming over. And it's not the greatest thing that anybody's ever said, but Jamie even does worse to her at certain points. And so I mean, I think that just that little snippet of their married life is not enough to draw full conclusions about whether or not they were happy, or whether or not in 20 years or in 18 years or however long it was, they were sexually active and, you know, all that stuff. I think their marriage was normal. And I think Claire was probably astute enough and well-adjusted enough, even in her grief, to make it normal for her own sanity, I guess.
All right, so Laura just tweeted us something it's an interesting point of view. So, and I'll just read it. It says, I can believe Claire had very little sex with Frank. We believe Jamie only had it twice in 20 years, right?
No.
You think he had it more than twice?
We can't get into spoilers because Nikki hasn't read that yet. But he has it definitely 100% canon has more sex than just with two people.
No.
Yes.
No.
Nikki, can you mute your listen for just a second? Okay. You good? Okay.
No, her mic is muted.
Okay, she's not listening. He married
me in Geneva.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Oh, yes. Oh, shit. Right. You're right.
No.
I blacked her out.
He tried. She always turned away.
Oh, they had sex.
No, they
had sex.
Really bad, horrible sex.
Not often,
You're right.
but they did have sex.
So 3 people. 3. I'm
Three,
sorry.
but not
I get
3
that's an
times.
additional 30% more people, but it's still
33.3% more people.
All right, I'm telling Nikki she can come back. Sorry for the spoiler, everybody.
No, you're right.
Yeah, I'm always right.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, man. But anywhoosie.
It is.
I do think that, I mean, Jamie was in jail. He had all this other horrible stuff happening to him. Being sexually active when you're Jamie and you don't want to do it in the butt with dudes is a lot harder than being sexually active if you're Claire and you're married to Tobias Menzies. I think it's a little easier.
I think that's the problem here.
It's a little easier for Claire to get some dick than it is for Jamie to accept dick.
# projecting. I think
No!
that's the root of the issue here.
I'm just saying, I think that Claire is more capable of getting sex on the regular than Jamie is. That's just logistics.
That's true.
not-
I mean,
since he's
Harvard
not gay.
Square versus Ardmore Prison, or however you say it.
Exactly.
I think that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So anywho's.
Anywho's.
We need to stop, guys. I'm sorry. Oh, for Anna, yeah, Nikki's only read the first 6 chapters, right, Nikki? You're back? Yeah, she's back. She's only read the first 6 chapters, I think.
She's back, but she's muted.
Yeah.
I've read a little bit past where we're at. I think I'm on like chapter 8 or something.
Okay. Well, speaking of that, we'll go ahead and plug the next in the Waterweeds. The next in the Waterweeds is part 3, which starts in chapter 7 and ends, I believe, in chapter 13. Yes, that's right. So just part 3, chapter 7 through chapter 13. And I love the way this is broken down because it's usually only about 6 to 8 chapters a time at meeting. And so you could read it in a couple of hours if you wanted to before we met and still be, be fully aware of what's going on. So it's going to be 2 weeks from tonight. So that is the 16th, Monday the 16th. And I hope you guys can join us. It'll be the same time probably, and the same channel, and other people maybe. I don't know.
Oh, it's not next week. It's in 2 weeks.
It's every 2 weeks. And
Karen and I will be watching a football game next week.
That's right. I'll be in California, which would have been way better because then it's on at 7 p.m. and not 10 p.m. for me. But I will be watching the national championship football game. I'll be watching Alabama roll all over the Clemson Tigers. Go team.
That won't be happening, but whatever. Roar.
I won't be watching that because I don't care about gladiator battles.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I have no idea what y'all are talking about, but it is apparently Monday Night Football.
My college team is playing Karen's college team in the National Football Championship.
Which is the University of Memphis playing? Because that's my college, and I'm sure they're great at football, but I don't know.
They did play in a bowl this year,
Oh, wow.
but there's like 48 bowls. So it's probably like, the Car Quest, Muffler Bowl or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. We're not a football team. We're basketball.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
That I do know.
Although Memphis beat
sport enough
Ole
for
Miss
that.
like 2 years ago when they were ranked, I think. They've had a few good wins lately.
I wouldn't know. I know this is the basketball stuff, but that's it. But anyway,
Take this
It
out
is.
again.
no, we're good. January the 16th, you guys. Part 3. I hope you enjoyed this first edition of In the Waterweeds. I hope you join us. We might have some special or not so special guests. And we don't know yet. But I hope you enjoyed book chat with us with Outlander. If you have more that you want us to talk about, tell us on the Goodreads thread. It's in the post for in the Waterweeds, and we'll put it in the the show notes or whatever. But the chapters next week are chapters 7 through 13. If you don't have the parts in your ebook or whatever, 7 through 13. And again, January 16th, 10 p.m. Eastern. That's the middle of the night for the East Coasters, but it's the sweet spot for the flyover states. So holla for the Mississippi River. Thanks for joining us. We will see you all very soon. Good night. So long. Farewell. Still alive.